Depression doesn't always show up as tears. Sometimes it shows up as fog. You wake up, do the bare minimum, talk to someone, and inside you're far away. And in the middle of that, you make a mistake. You try to fix it by controlling what can't be controlled. Your past, your chemistry, your family, your age, your energy, your motivation. You cling to it like someone trying to straighten the ocean with their hands, and all you accomplish is exhausting yourself even more. Look at the contradiction. When you feel sunk, your mind demands immediate results. It tells you you should feel better already, you should want to do things already, you should get out of it already. And that demand is like squeezing sand. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips away. The Stoics saw it clearly. Suffering multiplies when you confuse the world with your will. You don't need more force, you need better direction. The last thing we'll cover today is what changes the game. Because it doesn't just affect your mood, it affects your identity. If this is your first time here, my name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. Today we're going to order to your mind with 9 Stoic rules for facing depression with dignity, clarity, and calm, with no fantasies and no drama. Stay until the end. Let's begin. Rule 1. Separate what you control from what you don't. How many times have you woken up, and the first thing you do is fight your own state, as if you were failing for feeling this way? You tell yourself you shouldn't be tired, that what hurt you is in the past, that you have reasons to be fine, and without realizing it, you turn your day into a trial against yourself. That's where the wear and tear starts, not from depression, but from the absurd war against what's already happening inside you. Imagine you're in a house and there's a storm outside. You can't turn off the sky, but you can close the window. And yet when you're depressed, you do the opposite. You open the window and start arguing with the wind. You try to control the emotional weather instead of taking care of your stance in front of it. Control versus no control isn't a pretty theory. It's the line that separates possible calm from pointless suffering. The common mistake is thinking control means feeling good, as if your dignity depended on the mood of the day, and then you become a slave to a variable that changes on its own. Your energy, your humor, your biology, your memories. That isn't strength. That's fragility in disguise. You were sold the idea that a strong person is always motivated. No. A strong person knows how to act even when motivation doesn't show up. The internal consequence of this confusion is brutal. You blame yourself for moving slowly. You blame yourself for not answering messages. You blame yourself for not performing. And that guilt becomes extra weight on a body that's already tired. It's like walking with a bag of rocks just because you should walk faster. The problem isn't that it's hard. The problem is that you insult yourself while it's hard. Epictetus said it plainly. Some things depend on you and some things don't. And freedom begins the moment you stop demanding that your mind control what is out of reach today. What depends on you is your attention, your inner language, your minimum behavior, your way of interpreting what you feel. What doesn't depend on you is your mood lining up on command, and when you accept that, you stop fighting shadows and start recovering real power. Today you don't need a great heroic feat. You need an inner decision. Stop measuring your worth by how you feel. You can be sad and still be dignified. You can feel empty and still be decent. You can be slow and still be respectable. Look at the day as it is, not as you wish it were, and choose one thing that does depend on you, even if it's small, even if it's simple. Because when you separate control from no control, depression stops being a courtroom and becomes terrain you cross with quiet discipline. You don't beat it with brute force. You bring it into order with good judgment. Second rule, stop the destructive inner conversation. Have you noticed that many times it isn't the pain that destroys you, but the voice that comes with it? That voice that comments on everything, that interprets everything, that reminds you what you lost, what you didn't accomplish, what you should have gotten over by now. And it does it with a coldness you wouldn't use even with an enemy. The worst part is you get used to hearing it as if it were the truth. In everyday life, it shows up in small, almost invisible ways. You wake up late and the voice says you're a mess. You forget something and the voice says you're going downhill. You don't answer a call and the voice says you're alone because you deserve it. You walk down the street and don't look at anyone because you feel like everyone can see how tired you are. That conversation seeps into every gesture and shrinks you from the inside, like living in a room that keeps getting smaller. What you don't want to admit is this. Sometimes you prefer that voice, even though it hurts you, because it makes you feel like you're doing something with your pain. It gives you a false sense of control. Criticizing yourself feels like discipline. Punishing yourself feels like responsibility, but it isn't. It's violence toward yourself, and nobody climbs out of a pit by slamming their head against the wall to learn. The mechanism behind it is simple and cruel. Your mind looks for an explanation for the discomfort, and because it can't tolerate uncertainty, it chooses an easy cause. You. It feels more orderly to think you're the problem than to accept there are grey days, slow processes, old wounds, accumulated fatigue. So the mind becomes a prosecutor, and you become a permanent defendant. That dynamic doesn't heal, it only drains you. The Stoics trained something that seems forgotten today, separating facts from judgments. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that things don't hurt you, but what you say about them does. You're tired, that's the fact. I'm useless, that's the judgment. You're sad, that's the fact. I'm never getting out, that's the judgment. When you mix the two, you turn a state into a life sentence. Start listening to that voice the way you'd listen to a neurotic neighbor shouting behind a wall. It's there, yes. It's noisy, yes. But it isn't an authority. Each time it shows up, ask yourself calmly, is this a fact or an interpretation? And if it's an interpretation, is it helping me or sinking me? You don't need to win an argument, you need to stop obeying it. When you change your stance, your experience changes. Not because sadness magically disappears, but because it stops arriving with humiliation. You can tell yourself, today is hard, and I'm still holding myself up. Today I'm slow, and I'm still responsible. Today I don't feel like it, and I can still do the minimum with dignity. That isn't positivity, that's mental order. Depression becomes unbearable when you also become your own enemy. And you don't need more enemies. You need inner silence and judgment. 3. Avoid isolation. Depression has a trick that looks like protection, but it's a trap. It convinces you that shutting yourself away is being sensible. It tells you it's better not to bother anyone, not to talk, not to go out, not to respond. When I'm better, I'll come back, and days go by. Not because you want to be alone, but because you feel like you have nothing good to offer, and you'd rather disappear than be seen broken. Isolation doesn't always look like a closed door. Sometimes it's a screen on with the volume low, a conversation you answer in one-word replies, an invitation you leave on read, a bed that becomes refuge and prison at the same time. You become an expert at looking functional while disconnecting inside, as if your life were paused while the world keeps running without you. And here's the uncomfortable part. You were sold the idea that asking for company is weakness, that if you can't handle your mind alone, then you aren't strong. A polished lie. What you call strength is often wounded pride, the same pride that makes you smile when you're hurting, and then leaves you alone when you can't hold the mask anymore. That isn't dignity, it's isolation in a suit. The hidden cost is slow but brutal. When you isolate, your mind becomes a room without windows. Your thoughts bounce off the walls and get louder, more absolute, more cruel. You start believing nobody understands you, but in reality nobody hears you because you pulled away first. And the more you withdraw, the harder it becomes to return. It's a silent spiral. The Stoics weren't romantics of solitude. They were realists. They knew the human being is a social animal, and your character is tested in relationship, not in a cave. Marcus Aurelius wrote to steady himself, yes, but he governed in the middle of people, problems, tensions. Inner mastery isn't running from the world. It's walking through it without losing yourself. So change your stance. Don't wait until you feel ready to show up. Show up first, even in a minimal version. A short message, a brief call, a walk with someone without having to talk about everything. You're not looking to be rescued. You're preventing your mind from becoming your only voice. And that difference gives you air again. Depression gets stronger when it believes you have no witnesses. Keep at least one bridge lit. Loneliness doesn't heal you by magic. Loneliness without awareness consumes you. 4th rule. Rebuild minimal daily structure. When you're depressed, your life loses its edges. Days become a grey blur where everything blends together. You wake up late, eat at random times, procrastinate, blame yourself, distract yourself, procrastinate again. And you justify it with a sentence that sounds logical: I don't have energy. But energy doesn't appear in chaos. Energy needs a frame, like fire needs stacked wood, not a puddle. The scene is familiar. You wake up and the first thing you do is negotiate with yourself. 5 more minutes, then half an hour, then an hour. And when you finally get up, you already feel like you lost the day. That feeling isn't laziness, it's disorientation. Without structure, your mind doesn't know where to start, and what doesn't get started turns into weight. You end up exhausted without having done anything concrete. The usual excuse is that structure is for disciplined people, for people who are doing fine, not for someone in crisis. But that's the trap. Precisely when you're in crisis, you need the basics more than ever. Not a perfect planner or a heroic schedule. A stable minimum that holds you up when emotion won't cooperate. Structure isn't rigidity, it's ground. The invisible root is that you confuse motivation with movement. You wait to feel like it before acting, and because you don't feel like it, you don't act, and because you don't act, you feel worse. That circuit sinks you gently like quicksand. Structure breaks that circuit without an argument. It says, today we're not negotiating with mood. Today we'll do the minimum even if mood protests. The cost of not doing it is more than productivity. It's identity. When you go weeks without habits, you start seeing yourself as incapable, and that image sticks to your skin. Depression doesn't just take your joy, it steals your trust in yourself. Every day without a frame is a day your mind learns you're not in charge, and living like that is living without a spine. The philosophical turn is simple. Inner control is trained through small consistencies, not speeches. Epictetus wouldn't ask you to be happy tomorrow. He'd ask you to own your first act of the day, to choose one action that depends on you and do it without drama. Freedom for a Stoic starts small and accumulates. Stand differently. Choose one minimal ritual that repeats even if everything else is falling apart. Get up at a reasonable hour, open the window, shower, eat something simple, walk 10 minutes, tidy one corner. Don't turn it into a punishment list. Turn it into a signal of respect. When your day has edges, your mind stops spilling over. Structure isn't for good days. It's for when there are no good days. The person who restores the minimum restores command. 5th rule, train the body to support the mind. Depression whispers a dangerous idea, that this is only mental, that if you think differently, it will fix itself. And yes, thought matters, but your body isn't some separate vehicle. It's the stage where everything happens. When the body shuts down, the mind gets darker, and you keep treating it like an object that should obey even when it's exhausted. You can see it in everyday details that seem small but aren't. You breathe shallowly. You eat without hunger or you don't eat. You move as little as possible. You hunch over, looking down, as if your posture were a confession. And then you wonder why your mood doesn't improve. It's like asking a lamp to shine while leaving it unplugged. The body speaks too, and when you don't listen, it ends up yelling. Cultural narratives make it worse. You were sold that training is aesthetic, that moving is for looking good, that self-care is a luxury. So when you're depressed, you dismiss the physical as superficial. But the physical is the foundation. The body regulates your sleep, your energy, your chemistry, your ability to tolerate frustration. That isn't vanity, it's maintenance. The hidden cost of neglecting it is heavier sadness, not only because you feel weak, but because you become more sensitive to everything. A comment knocks you down, a small task overwhelms you, going out feels impossible. A body without movement loses tolerance. And when you lose tolerance, life feels more aggressive than it is. You defend yourself from a world that is really just asking for your presence. The Stoics understood this without modern gyms. They spoke of temperance, discipline, caring for the instrument. Marcus Aurelius insisted on not abusing himself with excesses, on keeping the body fit to fulfill duty, not out of moralizing but for clarity. A neglected body drags the mind down. A trained body supports the mind. Shift the focus. Don't train to transform yourself or prove anything. Train to move back into yourself. A walk that raises your heart rate, a bit of basic strength, a mindful stretch, something that reminds you you're still alive and you can still direct your energy. You don't need to feel like it. You need to start and let the body do its part. When the body gets organized, the mind stops fighting so many variables at once. It isn't an instant cure, it's a base. And the base is what lets you endure the days when your head won't cooperate. Your mind doesn't float in the air, it lives in your body. If you want to hold yourself up, start there. 6. Cut the need for external validation. What drags you down most isn't only sadness, it's how you measure it, by looking outside yourself. If someone replies, you feel relief. If someone ignores you, you crash. If you're recognized, you breathe. If you're not seen, you dim. And the hardest part is you've normalized this as self-worth, when it's really a rope around your neck, held by other people's hands. In daily life, it shows without you saying it out loud. You check your phone anxiously, check again for a message, reread what you wrote to see if you sounded good, replay whether you bothered someone, bored them, failed them. They're small checks that seem harmless, but together they build a life where your peace depends on other people's moods, and in depression that becomes fuel for rumination. What keeps that pattern going isn't the need for connection, it's hunger for confirmation. It's not that you want love, you want a guarantee that you're not disposable. When your mood is on the floor, your identity looks for a mirror, and if the mirror doesn't reflect something kind, your mind concludes you have no value. That's the trap. You confuse being loved with being approved, and you become addicted to external signals. It's like walking through a house with the light in someone else's hands. If they switch it on, you can see. If they switch it off, you stumble. So you start begging for light, pleasing, over-explaining, justifying yourself, apologizing for existing. You become careful, not out of respect but out of fear. The need for validation turns you into a guest in your own life, waiting for permission to feel at peace. The drain is slow and cumulative. You get tired of maintaining an image, of being fine so you won't be rejected, of smiling while you're empty inside. And when you finally break, you feel guilty for not being able to hold the character. Depression doesn't only hurt because of what you feel. It hurts because it convinces you you must perform to earn a place, and that exhausts even the strongest person. Here's the break. The problem isn't that others don't validate you enough. The problem is that you gave them the key. As long as you keep looking outside for proof of your worth, every silence becomes a verdict. It's not that people are bad. It's that people are variable. And building your stability on something variable is a polished way to collapse quietly. The Stoics wouldn't tell you, don't care about anyone. They'd tell you something more demanding. Your center is not negotiable. Epictetus spoke about what depends on you, and here one decisive thing depends on you, not handing your dignity to other people's opinions. You can appreciate affection but not beg for it. You can listen to criticism but not live on your knees before it. External validation is pleasant, but it cannot be your food. Try seeing yourself with a cleaner standard. Are you being decent with yourself today, even if nobody applauds? Are you doing the minimum with dignity, even if nobody notices? You don't need to convince anyone that you deserve to exist. You need to act like someone who already knows it. And when your mind demands proof, don't give it likes. Give it consistency, a small, quiet, firm behavior. When you adopt that stance, the world looks different. Messages stop being oxygen and become communication. Looks stop being judgment and become looks. Approval stops being a drug and becomes simple courtesy. And in that shift, depression loses one of its favorite weapons, the idea that your value lives in other people's hands. Your peace isn't begged for, it's upheld. Dignity that depends on applause isn't dignity, it's dependence. 7th rule, accept pain without building suffering. There's a moment in depression when you no longer know what part truly hurts and what part hurts because you're fighting it. Pain exists, yes, but suffering is built when you tell yourself you shouldn't feel it, when you interpret it as failure, when you turn it into proof your life is ruined. Stoicism doesn't ask you to like pain, it asks you not to turn it into your executioner. Often pain sneaks in through almost invisible gestures. You wake up with a weight in your chest, and your mind rushes to explain it, label it, blame you. A memory hurts, and you replay it again and again as if replaying it were justice. Loneliness hurts, and you insult yourself for being alone. Seconds of real pain followed by minutes of cruel interpretation. That's where suffering grows, not in the first hit, but in the commentary afterward. Hurry and automatic reaction distort everything. The moment pain shows up, you want to get it off you like it's a stain. You look for distraction, you look for a fight, you look for anesthesia. And because it doesn't go away, you conclude there's no way out. But pain doesn't submit to force. You pass through it. When you attack it, you harden it. When you observe it, it becomes clearer. Not because it disappears, but because it stops controlling your behavior. Imagine you're in the ocean and a cold wave hits you. If you tense up, it hits harder. If you relax, it soaks you and passes. That isn't a pretty metaphor, it's a practical law. Pain is a wave. Suffering is staying rigid, fighting the water, demanding the sea apologize. In depression, you become rigid because you're afraid of breaking, and that rigidity ends up breaking you from the inside. The Stoic principle here is sober. Don't add judgment to the fact. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to see things as they are. Pain is pain, period. The rest is usually story. This shouldn't be happening to me. This humiliates me. This proves I'm weak. You don't need to deny what you feel. You need to stop turning it into identity. Pain is a state. It is not your name. Pause consciously when it appears. Not to meditate perfectly, but to stop reacting like a wounded animal. Ask yourself calmly, what part is sensation and what part is narrative? What part is sadness and what part is insult? What part is fatigue and what part is demand? That single distinction gives you back a margin of freedom that depression tries to take from you. Acceptance isn't surrender. Acceptance is stopping the argument with what's inevitable so you can act on what's possible. Pain can be in your chest, but it doesn't have to govern your tongue, your gaze, your minimum decision of the day. And when you stop building suffering on top of pain, you discover something almost shocking. Even on a grey day, you can live with inner decency. Remember, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. 8. Set limits on what drains you. In depression, it isn't always what happened that destroys you. Many times, it's what you keep allowing. There are people, conversations, places, and routines that take your strength without asking permission, and you tolerate them out of habit, guilt, or fear of seeming harsh. But when you're fragile, what drains you isn't a detail. It's a hole in the bottom of your boat. It drains you quietly. A family member who always criticizes, a friend who only shows up to unload their chaos, a home where nobody asks how you are, a job that demands you like a machine, a screen that steals hours and then leaves you empty. And you tell yourself it's normal, that's just life, there's no other way. But inside, your body knows. Each exposure leaves you more tired, shorter on patience, more likely to fall. The usual confusion is thinking boundaries mean fighting. You think a boundary is a shout, a threat, a dramatic breakup. And because you don't want drama, you choose to stay quiet. But staying quiet isn't peace. Staying quiet is giving up territory. And in depression, every piece of territory you give up turns into resentment, exhaustion, and that feeling that everyone has a right to you except you. Imagine your energy like a candle in a windy room. You can light it 1,000 times, but if you leave the window open, it will always go out. A boundary isn't a wall against people. It's closing the window so your flame has a chance. You don't need to become cold. You need to stop living exposed to currents that blow you out and then wonder why you can't warm anything. The existential consequence of not setting boundaries is hard. You start living a life that doesn't feel like yours. You wake up already tired because you know what's waiting for you. The same intrusion, the same demand, the same emotional load nobody acknowledges. And over time, you don't just lose energy, you lose respect for yourself. Because part of you concludes quietly that if you allow it, it must be what you deserve. That's where depression finds an argument and repeats it. The break is quiet. You are not obligated to explain your exhaustion for it to be valid. You don't have to convince anyone that it drains you. If it drains you, it drains you. Period. Your mind has known it for a long time, but you've postponed the decision out of fear of making things awkward. And yet you realize something. You're already uncomfortable. It's just that the uncomfortable one is you, not them. Stoicism would call it temperance and inner mastery, choosing your stance over your impulse to please. Seneca spoke of protecting time and peace as finite goods. A Stoic boundary doesn't shout, doesn't humiliate, doesn't over-justify. It plants itself. It says, this is as far as I go. I don't accept this, I won't carry this. And you say it calmly because your calm is proof it isn't a whim, it's clarity. When you adopt that awareness, your inner experience changes. You stop feeling like a victim of other people's schedules and start feeling responsible for your space again. Not because you control others, but because you stop lending yourself to what breaks you. And that decision, however small, gives you back something depression tries to steal, the sense that you have authority over your own life. Some boundaries aren't negotiable because they're the price of your health. Your energy is life, protecting it is self-respect. 9. Live with purpose even when you don't feel like it. Depression steals something more dangerous than joy. It steals direction. You don't just feel bad, you feel like nothing matters, as if any effort is pointless because the results don't show. And then you start living on inertia, waiting for motivation to return like a visitor who will eventually knock on the door. But life isn't sustained by visitors. It's sustained by a course, even when the heart is switched off. In daily life, this shows up almost invisibly. You stop caring for small projects. You stop talking about plans. You avoid commitments because you don't know how you'll feel tomorrow. You postpone simple decisions, not because they're hard, but because you don't see the point. And when there's no why, everything weighs twice as much. It's like walking with no destination. Every street feels endless. Every step feels wasted. Every day feels like the one before. What most people don't notice is the cruelest subtlety. You confuse purpose with enthusiasm. You think having purpose means feeling fire, feeling desire, feeling emotional clarity. And if you don't feel it, you conclude you have no purpose. But that's a comfortable misunderstanding. True purpose isn't an emotion, it's a stance. It's deciding what kind of person you are, even when you feel grey inside. Mood changes, chosen identity remains. Imagine a lighthouse in fog. It doesn't magically clear the fog, but it gives you orientation. Without a lighthouse, you move in circles and exhaust yourself. With a lighthouse, you move slowly, but you move. Purpose works the same way. It doesn't cure you instantly, but it keeps you from getting lost. And when you're depressed, you don't need euphoria. You need a steady lighthouse that reminds you where to walk when your mind wants to quit. Living from the unconscious pattern is waking up asking, what do I feel like doing today? And if the answer is nothing, abandoning yourself. Living from the new stance is waking up asking, what is the right thing today, even if it costs me, and doing it in a minimal version. It isn't heroism, it's coherence. Depression doesn't feed only on sadness, it feeds on days without direction. Here, Stoicism steps in without speeches as a rule of life. Epictetus made it clear, first tell yourself what you want to be, then do what you have to do. He didn't talk about waiting for inspiration. He talked about defining character. On grey days, your purpose isn't to feel good, it's to act with dignity. Care for your body, fulfill one small responsibility, hold a relationship with respect, keep one simple promise to yourself. Pause and look at yourself honestly. If today you didn't feel like doing anything, what minimal action would still represent the person you want to be? Not a perfect list, not a dramatic transformation. One action that holds your identity when mood fails. Because purpose isn't a distant goal, it's the daily decision not to abandon yourself, even when your mind suggests you disappear. If you adopt this stance, something deep shifts inside. The pain doesn't vanish overnight, but stability appears. You no longer depend on an emotional spark to move. You become someone who walks even when it rains, someone who holds steady even without applause, someone who respects themselves even when they don't feel like it. And that kind of coherence is the quiet beginning of recovery. Motivation comes and goes. Purpose holds you up. You've gone through 9 rules that don't try to sugarcoat depression, but to give you solid ground again. Because the problem isn't that you have dark days. The problem is that on those days your mind convinces you that you no longer have authority over yourself. And that's false. Stoic philosophy doesn't promise constant happiness. It promises something more realistic and more valuable. An inner backbone. When you recover the difference between what depends on you and what doesn't, when you correct your self-talk, your isolation, your routine, your body, your boundaries and your direction, you begin to feel something that isn't euphoria. It's self-respect. The deep change this proposes doesn't look like an explosion. It looks like a quiet transformation. You start acting without negotiating yourself so much, speaking to yourself with less cruelty, holding to the basics with firmness. And that firmness, over time, creates space to breathe. Depression wants everything to be extreme. Either you're fine or you're lost. Stoicism teaches a third path. Today I'm in pain, and even so, I carry myself with dignity. That isn't resignation. It's maturity. Now a responsibility falls to you, one no one else can take on. Are you going to keep waiting to feel ready to live, or are you going to begin living soberly even if you don't feel ready? Because life doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for presence. And presence doesn't appear when everything is fixed. It appears when you decide to stop abandoning yourself. There comes a moment when you stop asking whether you can and start asking whether you're willing to hold yourself up, even a little, even slowly. Inner freedom isn't born when the pain disappears. It's born when the pain no longer rules you. If this content brought you value, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And I want to ask you something simple but meaningful. Leave the phrase, "I am Stoic," in the comments, along with the name of the country you're listening from. I love seeing the different parts of the world that make up this growing community of Stoic men and women. Let it be more than just a comment. Let it be a declaration of identity. Here I am. I'm putting myself in order, and I'm not abandoning myself. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. 2 recommended videos will appear on your screen to help you go deeper into this same path of clarity and inner mastery. Choose one, step in, and continue the journey with calm, but with firmness. Thank you for being here. See you next time.